Hot take, I'm sick of hot takes. Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Jacob. Welcome back to Sunday Yap Session, the show where every Sunday I hop on here and yap at y'all about something with some sort of cohesive through line to carry everything through. Sometimes we do better than others. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like. That helps me out quite a bit. And if you want to come yap with me every single Sunday, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Today, it is Black Raspberry LaCroix. Y'all already know the vibes. Let's get into this, because I have things I want to talk about today. Also, bear with me today. I just got my COVID vaccine a couple days ago. I got like the COVID and the flu together. And if you do that, like definitely get them. Definitely important. Definitely good for your health and things like that. But last time I got the two of them together, it was like pretty chill. Nothing really happened and I was fine. This time, I have been in the trenches, y'all. I was basically in bed for a day and a half, essentially. Couldn't get up. I was so sore. I was so tired. And I'm like still kind of there a little bit. Still like feeling kind of like half awake for the most part. So like if this one is a little bit more meandery, a little bit more rambly than normal, just know that I'm not firing on all cylinders today. But I wanted to do my best, hop on here, make a video, and I did have something specific I wanted to talk about. So it's like, let me get on here now and talk about this before I forget. What I want to talk about today is what I'm kind of referring to for today's video as the hot take industrial complex that I see on TikTok. And the way that I feel it's pretty much ruining content on the app. And what I kind of mean by that is that I feel like on TikTok, especially at least in the circles I'm in, the algorithm is really pushing hot takes. It's really pushing like 30-second to 1-minute inflammatory statements about whatever sort of thing that you can talk about. And it isn't a surprise based on how all of these apps work. All of these apps are going to reward negativity more than positivity because negativity gets people in the comments and interacting and engaging and sharing it with their friends and yada yada yada. People getting in fights in the comments, and these algorithms don't discriminate between positive and negative interaction. So I totally understand why like this more like negative inflammatory content gets rewarded and gets pushed more on the app. But I feel like that combined with TikTok kind of eroding our attention spans in a lot of ways and really like forcing people, well, not forcing people, it's all ultimately optional, but encouraging people essentially to get statements out in as little time as possible and not really like explore any sort of nuance or any sort of wider considerations for conversations. I'm noticing a trend of people just like saying inflammatory things, not really having like any sort of like reasoning or justification behind them, and then getting like somewhat surprised or shocked when people like are reacting negatively. And I don't know, there's been like a couple scenarios that are like in this sort of realm that I kind of wanted to talk about. Mostly is jumping off points to break down. One of them, which we'll get into in a minute, I'm considering making a whole video about. So once we get to that part, we'll talk about it. Let me know if you'll want to hear a whole video. I think the easiest and most prominent example of this as of late is the whole Be Better controversy. If you haven't heard about this whole scenario, it's centering around this content creator on TikTok who goes under the username of Be Better, which is the brand name for his company that he uses to sell herbal remedy honey, which we'll get into that whole part of it in a minute. Okay, so I completely forgot to talk about the whole honey thing, and it's not super relevant to the story, so I'm just gonna rapid fire go through this. So basically, homeboy runs this company where he's selling like this honey that is infused with these herbs somewhere in this special mountain in Greece. I'll put some stuff on the screen, And I believe the honey is like $80 a bottle or something like that. Like something, in my opinion, very overpriced. I saw a couple TikTokers dig into this, and it looks like you can buy the herbs that he's getting for like fractions of the prices that he's selling it for. It seems like, in my opinion, he's using his Greek background to add a little bit of like mysticism and like, ooh, traditional, and kind of overhyping these products for what they really are. It seems like there's a pretty big markup on this herbal honey that he's selling, which is really funny because his whole thing is talking about like the downfall of and like talking about deceptive marketing tactics and things like that, when it seems like, in my opinion, he is engaging in some level of, if not deceptive marketing practices, of definitely taking advantage of buying low cost materials and then spinning it and making it a very high cost product. But basically his entire kind of like hook and his claim and his like reason why he's gotten so popular on TikTok is he is the youngest person in Canada to get an MBA in marketing, I believe. And so he mostly makes videos branded around like the downfall of, so it'll be like the downfall of Charlie D'Amelio, the downfall of XY company. And he does these like marketing sort of social media analyses of these companies or influencers in different situations that they've gone into and kind of breaking down in like a professional marketing analysis sort of sense, like why they had a downfall or why he thinks that like a company is going to have a downfall or things things like that. Now, I never really followed this guy, but I had watched quite a few of his videos because he does a really good job of making them really engaging. He always starts out with a strong hook. There's always like some sort of like movie or something playing in the background, so if you kind of get distracted with what he's saying, there's something to pull you back in. And he's very clearly good at marketing. He has a good hook, he has good engaging content, and talks in a way that makes you want to stay and watch the video. But from the beginning of seeing his content, I was always kind of like put off by it a little bit because he tends to make like very inflammatory statements and say things that I feel like are really dramatic. And like anytime there was some sort of like review of food or like a drink or some sort of like product like that, every time he ate it, it was like he was eating the most like disgusting, vile, rotten thing he's ever eaten, and had these like over the top reactions that really seemed like extremely dramatic based on what the subject matter was. He was doing like a little too much, so that always kind of made me a little bit sus of his content. But I tend to like the delivery sometimes, and just even if I didn't like the videos, they were engaging and they kept me entertained. And when I'm sitting on there like brain rot scrolling through TikTok, sometimes I just watch whatever slop it throws up. So that's how I got into his videos. But he recently posted a video that is now taken down, and it was called like the downfall of the Kamala Harris campaign. And basically in that video, he was talking about how Kamala Harris was only using social media marketing to advertise her campaign. He was saying that she was relying on identity politics to get people to vote for her, and like a myriad of other things that just were like objectively not true. And not that you need to be an American to comment on American politics, but especially as a Canadian, you could tell that he hadn't really done a lot of research and wasn't exposed to a lot of the things the average American, who was the primary audience for this campaign marketing, is seeing and knows to be very obvious and true. And there were like one or two points in the video that like were genuine points. Like he talked about how like she hadn't posted any policy on her website, and that was a flaw because people wanted to read the policy. That was like pretty much the main point that was good in it. Everything else was literally just like baseless claims that were not based in any sort of sense of reality. And if you had taken 2 seconds to look them up, you would know that it's not true. And kind of opposed to what I was talking about in the beginning, where these were like short, quick takes, this was like a full-on like multi-minute video. He had made little like Canva infographics, which were really corny and like had errors in them too. But like this was like a whole video that he had put together, and I assume maybe scripted or I don't know. But like the hot take of it all is the part that I'm kind of talking about, where he was just saying all of these statements that were very clearly inflammatory and just like weren't true. And after getting dunked on by like every corner of TikTok, essentially, he came out and made an apology video. We won't get into the apology video. It was pretty bad. Like it was a good apology as far as like influencer apologies go, but it was basically just regurgitating almost like bar for bar what other creators had been saying to him in criticism of his video. So it felt less like an apology and more like a Spark Notes ChatGPT rehash of everything that had been said about him. So like that was all weird. But like the hot take of it all is the part that really confuses me and annoys me about this situation. And he even admitted it himself. Like this video was poorly researched. I should have looked into it a lot more. And I'm seeing a lot of that kind of content on TikTok. I feel like I see a lot of people making big, bold statements about things that they clearly don't know anything about, have no exposure about, have not done any sort of research about, and just like are getting on here to say something that's a hot take and to say something controversial and to get people riled up. And I just like really don't understand it. I mean, I understand it from a business perspective. It's very lucrative because if you are in like the TikTok creator program or whatever and you make a video longer than a minute, especially if it's controversial, especially if it's something that gets people riled up and they're gonna engage in the comments and share it with people, you can make a ton of money from making these hot takes. And like if your bank account's getting filled up, like who cares if it's true or factual or correct or anything like that. But I think even outside of like the financial aspects, I think there's just like a need for people to be right. And I think I talked about this in another video, but I think a lot of people online, any sort of like critique, commentary sort of online space, I think a lot of people really like to hear themselves talk and don't really care if what they're saying is true or not. They just want to have an opinion on something. And I find that bizarre too, especially when it's things that like don't even affect them at all. I'm like, why do you even care to like put your thoughts out here about this? Not that anyone should be limited to like talking about things. If you want to talk about something, cool, whatever. I just like don't understand the motivation to get on here and make like these very bold claims around things that you're clearly either not informed about or it doesn't affect you. Like that seems weird, right? I think another example of this on TikTok, that this discourse gets rehashed like every 2 or 3 months, I feel like, especially around Pride season. But there's a whole lot of discourse on TikTok about like open relationships and polyamory that I find very, very funny. This most recent iteration of this discourse was kind of started by this one creator who, I'll put the video up on the screen so you can see it.
I don't like polyamorous people. I don't like polyamorous people. I don't like polyamorous people. I don't like polyamorous people.
They made like what they're saying is a satirical video. I think they made it to get people riled up and they know that, but like that's neither here nor there. And that kind of spawned a whole like wave of like hot take think piece videos where people are talking about how they don't like polyamory, how they think that people that are polyamorous are ugly, how they think it's like an excuse for cheating, and that anyone who's in any sort of like non-monogamous relationship scenario is like forcing it on other people and da 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 da. And like this discourse, every time it pops up, is really funny because I think you can tell very quickly who is actually interacting with people that are polyamorous, that are in open relationships, and who are just people that hear about these things online and aren't actually in community with these people and don't have like any sort of vested stake in it. And I've even had people like send me this content and like thinking that I'm gonna agree with it, which I think is really funny. And like I don't really talk about this a lot online just because like I don't know, it doesn't really come up a lot, and I don't really like talking about like my intimate like sexual relationship life online. But pretty much every single relationship I've been in is an open relationship. I've been in polyamorous relationships before, and like I think a lot of people online think it's this really like spicy, salacious, big sort of deal that's full of like drama and like fighting and stuff. It really is like not that exciting. It's really quite boring, and most of the people I know that are in open relationships or that are also polyamorous, it's pretty boring. It's not like really that exciting or thrilling. So when I see these people dropping these hot takes, I always think it's really, really funny. I kind of want to make a whole video about this discourse because there are a lot of like interesting common threads I see throughout these arguments. So that might be something that I might do at some point. I thought about doing that today, but I kind of want to make sure it's a little more structured than these sort of yap videos where I'm kind of just talking off the cuff. There was like one particular video, and I'm not going to tag the person because I don't want to engage with them, but there was basically a person who made a video kind of like echoing a lot of these points I said, where they were talking about like polyamorous people in open relationships, and were basically saying that they don't think that polyamory is real. They think that it is just people who are trying to come up with excuses for wanting to cheat and feel bad about wanting to cheat, that they are like people who like crave sex and can't be like satisfied by one person, and like just like all of this stuff that just like if you interact with anybody who is in this community and anyone who is in these relationship dynamics, it's just like not true. And I think a lot of people are conflating their disdain for people that are in open relationships or people that are polyamorous for people that like are just cheaters, or a lot of times toxic men who just want harems. And like, are there people that are these kind of toxic archetypes that claim to be in open relationships or claim to be polyamorous? Yes. Are there also toxic, manipulative cheaters who are also monogamous? Also yes. And I find it very interesting and very telling that in a lot of these discourses, people will start out saying like, oh, I don't like this, I don't think it's real, da 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 da. But then like, if you press these people to talk about these things and explain why they really don't think it's valid or why they don't think it's real, I've had this conversation with so many people, so like, I'm pretty confident on this. The conversation always devolves into either some sort of purity culture, sort of like espousal of values, or it's just that they don't understand it and they have no desire to do it, and then therefore think that like it's bad because they don't want it. And I was talking to my friend about this. I just think it's so funny that people are so concerned about things that they are never going to have to do or that are between consenting adults. And it gives me very chronically online vibes too, because a lot of these people have disdain for open relationship polyamorous communities based on like the vocal minority of people that are on like TikTok and stuff showing off these lifestyles. And like, it is very overwhelmingly a certain demographic that gets pushed online where you see these things. Like, it's like your prototypical like white Portlandian queer. Like, and no shade to white queer people from Portland, but like that is always like the archetype that gets showed in these sort of relationship dynamics, and then these people see like one or two people in these spaces like being cringy or whatever and decide that like that's the entire community. And especially in queer spaces, I think this is really funny because that's like textbooks discrimination. Like taking the actions of a small few and then casting it amongst a wider group. It's so silly. It's so silly to me. And from this discourse too, you would think that like everybody is in an open relationship and everybody is like polyamorous and all of these people are trying to like force this lifestyle upon people. I'll see if I can find some stats. I don't know if that's like well researched or not, but like the vast majority of people I know are in monogamous relationships. I think people think that this is so much more of a widespread thing than it really is, just because they see a handful of people online doing this. I'll see people like making these entire little like think piece hot take videos about how they hate open relationships, they hate polyamory, da 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 da, and it's like, well, are you being asked to do that? No. Are you in your day-to-day basis, is the society as a whole pressuring you to be in an open relationship, to be poly? No. Is this a normative lifestyle that most people are doing? No. Are you under any obligation to do that if you don't want to? No. And so I find it so funny that people get so heated about this. It really is just like, don't touch grass. Like, for a group of people that really does not seem to like this and think it's like the worst, most disgusting thing ever, like they love to talk about it. They love to talk about it. I don't really know even where I want to go with that. That's pretty much all I wanted to say on that. If you want a whole video about open relationships and polyamorous relationships and like the discourse surrounding it, let me know. I'll go get out my Google Docs and actually make a formal sort of outline. Because like I said, the vast majority of my relationships have been open relationships. I've been in polyamorous relationships before. It's quite boring. It's quite simple. It's not that super wild and exciting as people online seem to portray it as. And like the sensationalizing of it all is just like so silly to me. I'm like, y'all, most of the people I know that are living these lives, it's very boring. It's very simple. It's very like, and I feel like I always talk about this in these videos, but that's why I enjoy YouTube so much more and like I enjoy long form content. And I find myself more and more like wanting to be more on YouTube and watching more YouTube than I used to again, and investing more of my energy in creating content on YouTube, because there is so much more room and so much more attention span to like give topics like this that are so complex and require a lot of nuance to talk about, the actual consideration and the nuance they need, and not just getting on here and dropping like a 1-minute hot take and like that being the furthest we want to go on the analysis. I am always someone who's going to be pro research, pro like thoroughly exploring things, and I really like taking a lot of considerations when talking about things, and like TikTok really is just in so many ways the antithesis to that. And I think on the audience side too, I think the audiences are really encouraging it as well, because outside of like a handful of exceptions for certain types of content, if you make videos on TikTok and you're talking for like more than like 2 minutes, it seems, I feel like every time people will be in the comments being like, this was too long, get to the point, you're rambling. But then if you try to say something pretty concisely and pretty quickly and not necessarily like address all of the nuance for XY reason, then people in the comments will be like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? So it really is just like such a catch-22 where like you really can't win in a lot of ways. So I think it's like from all sides. I don't think it's just like the creators dropping the hot takes. I think it's also the audiences that are like eating this slop up and encouraging it. So it's like, I don't know. TikTok's also annoying me. I don't know if y'all have seen this too, but there is just like so much nudity now that I'm seeing on TikTok, which is freaking me out. If you like scroll on live now, at least like I've been seeing a lot of this, and some of my mutuals have been noticing it as well. There are just like grown men just like naked diddling with their little aubergine on TikTok live and like using a filter or whatever to kind of like obscure it. Like they use these like lava lamp filters. You can clearly tell like what it is. It's just not like bare skin for the most part. Although I did see one where it literally was just that. And so like that's freaking me out about TikTok too. It's like I'm scrolling and it's either like inflammatory hot take where it makes no sense and people are just talking out of their ass, or it's just people showing their ass, showing their aubergine, showing their secret garden. So it's like, I feel like TikTok is just like slowly nosediving into being like a garbage website. I really hope they like will clean things up and get it together, because I do like the app for the most part. It's just like, I don't know, there's so many issues. So many issues. I think we're gonna call it there, because if I sit here and ramble about how much TikTok annoys me, yet I'm still on it, so I'm like, I don't know, I'm part of the problem too. But we could be here all day, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. Thank you all for watching. This is more, I feel like, rambly, less cohesive than normal Yap session. Like I said, still recovering, still trying to get back to normal, so hopefully next time we'll be a little bit more put together. We'll see, I don't know. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like I said at the beginning. That helps me out so much. And if you want to come yap with me every single Sunday, hit that subscribe button, because I'll be here every single Sunday. We're gonna have a handful of bonus videos coming out over the next few weeks too, which I'm really excited about. So keep an eye out for those. We're gonna be doing some fun stuff on the channel. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.